Simplified. Welcome to the Data Simplified podcast. During our last podcast, we discussed the importance of data-driven culture and its role in decision making. Today's podcast takes it a step further. AI-driven decision making, harnessing AI to enhance strategic and operational decision making. Today products facilitator, we have with us Mechie. She is our chief data and AI strategist, the head honcho, the big cheese. She wears all the hats. She'll be leading this discussion with Rohan Light. So I'll pass it on to you, Mechie.
Thank you, Nancy, for the great introduction. Rohan, welcome today to our podcast. We're very excited to have you all the way from New Zealand.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And yes, we are all the way from New Zealand.
Right. Could you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into data and AI?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm a white male New Zealander. I lived in both city and country growing up, so I came to understand the country quite well. I got into the public sector in about 2003. I then for my sins, was good at certain skills, and so ended up doing recovery work for New Zealand's Inland Revenue. And so that sort of whole financial side of things came well to me. Off the back of that came some data projects. This was back in 2010, where the most controversial thing we had was a dialer. And I started looking at the risk elements of that. At the same time, I was transitioning into governance generally. And that was at Inland Revenue. So it's a pretty serious place. It's amongst the most sensitive data ever, and we are rigorously trained. And that training I carried over into volunteer work, where I was the chair of the SaaS users of New Zealand, woot woot, 2,500 really interesting people, and that helped me understand actually where the workforce was going. Then getting to the point, bit of a long story, eh? And then in 2016, 2017, I worked for the Data Futures Partnership. I had to do a advisory piece on re-identification risk, which is obviously, it's a big deal. It's going to be a big deal forever. Right. But my point is, we actually want to know where it can be controlled before it explodes. Mm-hmm. From there, I worked through various public agencies, all sorts really, and then found my way into health, which was a career aim, probably since about 2015. I thought, actually, the hardest data work is happening in health. It's the hardest because it's morally hard, it's ethically hard, it's spiritually hard at times. Obviously, physically, it has to be hugely rigorous. It contributes to science, and it has so many conflicting elements that need to be balanced. And that's where I am right now. There you go.
Right. So you actually took a very interesting path, and it actually prepared you for where we are. It's very serendipitous. So let's start off with this question. What do you see as being the future of AI-driven decision-making?
Okay. The immediate future is rocky. The medium-term future will see some fairly stable use case categories, but they won't be as broad as we're being promised. That's because I believe in terms of decision-making, the technology is going to collapse in on itself, and we're going to be left with the age-old problem of humans figuring out how to make human decisions. Right. In the long term, we should see more variety in commercial vehicle. I think AI, writ large, broadly understood, with 1-2 technology cycles, that's 7 to 14 years, should lead to substantial changes in how organizations see data as an asset and actually use it, I believe, because it keeps looping back into the financial side of things. It keeps doing it. If you look, for instance, I'll stop talking in a minute, but one of the things I really look at is cryptocurrency. It's purely financialized technology instrument. Therefore, and it's copyable, its business model translates. So it's actually a very good analysis point.
Right.
Back to you.
No, very interesting way you sort of listed out the future based in terms of near term, mid-term, and long term. How does this how do you see AI replacing, or if AI can replace human decision making in those sort of three tiers as well? And should it?
Yes, it definitely should in many cases. This is the interesting thing. Definitely listeners should follow Ethan Mollick's coverage on LinkedIn. It's always very rich and takes us through the many positive use cases of these software agents. Let's call them that. Then there's a whole heap of decisions that these agents should be let nowhere near, because of their tendency towards confabulation, aka hallucination, aka just making stuff up. And the closer we place these inherently erratic tools to fundamental human and social decision-making structures, the more we should be concerned and the more controls we will need. It is possible to control these things. I'll stop in a minute, but the message I would say is controls, when they're designed to be so, multiply the control surface. They don't just add, they can actually multiply it. When you use controls in the same way that we produce a conditional probability within business processes, within organizations, it is actually possible to lock down large areas quite well. And I would define quite well as better than a human baseline.
Okay, I'll take you on that. But speaking of hallucinations, you brought this up. Given that we have most AI systems, or at least the generative AI ones, that hallucinations or lies, as I prefer to call them, are part of the result. Should we trust this systems? Should we trust AI decision making that is based on generative AI that has these hallucinations as part of the core features?
Nice. I like the way you led straight into the normative understanding. You know, these are lies. And then you qualified it nicely, leading me in. So I say to everyone, immediatamente, look at your baseline, understand what your baseline is. Make a baseline. If you don't have a baseline to your decision making, then your AI is as good as a random guess. Right? So this comes down to, first of all, be aware of what the playing field looks like yourself. Then run a controlled experiment. Be a scientist. Yeah.
So I'll pose this to you, right? That's the scientific way to go about doing this. But 9 in 10 people don't do it that way. 9 in 10 organizations don't. They have the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. They're trying to be competitive. They want to position themselves as innovative. They start out with, what are the use cases? Can I do a pilot? Can I throw in one? Right?
Man.
So from that, and so they don't take the sort of general scientific approach or right approach in order to embracing and implementing AI decision making as part of the organizational structure. So, are there particular use cases that are you would recommend or you would list out as more not just in terms of the benefits, but also in caveat in consideration of the fact that most people that are going to be implementing it are not going to be taking a scientific approach. They're going to be looking at it strictly from a business standpoint in terms of, I want to say that we're doing AI.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think there is a decent use case in here for the skilled assistant.
Okay.
So if we're running a business, ice cream shop, coffee, whatever, most of your time will be spent on the business, in the business, not on the business. You want recourse to something that's going to solve 70% of the problem space. Sweet. That is the AI. And we might be able to say the well-conditioned, well-trained, controlled AI use case. It's a really, really good one. It is rich. When you look at the majority of the traffic on a business site like LinkedIn, for instance, much of it is it's derivative within a catalog class.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so therefore, really, you want your AI to be able to arbitrage time, crunch it really quickly to save you weeks and months of trawling through LinkedIn and have it in checking out what the right advice is, how to frame the decision. So I'm going to try and answer your question. If you're in a stable, settled market, you're likely to get good workable use cases delivered through your large existing software providers,
Mm-hmm.
because it's becoming easy enough for them to inject it into business as usual.
That's a fair point, right? So it's usually easiest in that way. You're not responsible for any management, deployment, maintenance of the solution. And you know that your software vendor or whatever you're using for your ERP or CRM system has that baked in, so you can rightfully state that you are leveraging AI. Now, let me bring up a nuance point. How would you differentiate automation from AI? Because when we're candidly, we're using like help take out a lot of the tasks and manual tasks that we're doing, which is purely automation. And AI itself is so broad, right? So that anyone with regression analysis will call it AI. Anyone that's automates anything is AI. And literally, it is AI by the pure definition of what artificial intelligence is. But there's artificial intelligence that's not truly intelligent.
Yeah, you're right. We would say that's a failure of market terminology. So there is very, very, very clearly, once you look into it, large product space, massive. And within that massive product space, there's huge areas of depth and some areas of just deserts, nothing's there, just but a few things. So we are definitely looking at a need for clearer definitions.
Mm.
And so I don't even usually use it. And on LinkedIn, I'll say artificial knowledge agent or software agent. I don't even use AI. It's pointless. It's so broad as to be functionally meaningless and scientifically meaningless.
It is. And this is so interesting. As much as there's a need for more clearly defined terminology, because it's blown up so much and there's such a perceived value, irrational, I would say, tied to that term. It's not going anywhere. You see startups, right, that are around Series C raising billions of dollars that don't even have a prototype. All years that it's AI, right? It's crazy in terms of the amount of money that's going into innovation and businesses around AI these days.
Yeah, you just look at the earnings last month-ish of Google, Amazon, and Apple. They all dropped at the same time, and they're going, "We love the money." And they're the main drivers of our technology ecosystem. So it's coming in so many different ways. But I'll just come back to our ice cream shop seller example, right? The AI is going to come bundled in with every other element of your existing bundle, software usage, right? It's because it's going to be everywhere. Look at Copilot. There was an article yesterday, Gary Marcus, talking about how some of these large language models are just covertly deeply racist, and how the heck do you manage for that? Sorry, I think I've gone off track. Let's ground back to the conversation, but I think it's going back to the essential unreliability of the devices when you put them close to important things.
Right.
Yeah, don't do that.
So we're talking about AI products and AI innovation, but specifically, what would you say if you were to give us a tangible example of an AI-driven decision making? What would that look like? And if you
What
give
a
an
good
example, and
question.
then what is an example that will work, and what's an example that will not work in the context of bias and other risk?
Wow, man, you got 3 questions in one. I think the first thing, if we're going to ground this in AI decision making,
Right.
and if we're grounding this in can we go up a few levels than the ice cream factory scenario? Can we go into the tech industry somewhere?
Sure.
Right. Okay. In that case, there is a fair amount of structure in your decision making already.
Mm-hmm.
Meetings,
Right.
annual reports. These are the important parts of your business cycle. So you just build your AI around them, your AI use. Fundamentally, make sure that AI doesn't create a different beat or rhythm within the organization. It's critical. Then invest in decision control tools within your main executive level meeting environments. Bum, bum, bum. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the decision behavior of groups. Decision behavior of groups. Groups make decisions behaviorally. They don't actually make decisions intellectually or evidentially, usually. Sometimes they do evidentially, but usually it's strongly behavioral. And so we're using behavioral science. That's the first thing. And so in your primary decision-making structures, there are likely to be blind spots. That's what our decision control AI friend, expert advisor software thing does for us. It says, hey guys, you're so white, you've missed this.
If only we had. So, and how, like in your experience, how many organizations you work with have this layer, this control layer?
None. Few.
Neither.
Few.
Gotcha.
What does this tell us? It tells us that the problem isn't technological, it's social.
Culture, absolutely.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. You can get a purely correct astrological AI to tell you what to do. I've heard of executives asking ChatGPT what their priorities are. If we have an organization where the execs are doing that, get rid of the execs. We've already got ChatGPT. Right? Because we're paid to gather in groups and make smart decisions. And if we're not doing that as humans already, then either we're buying the AI to kick us into shape via boot camp style, or it's window dressing and we're just going to ignore it like every other thing that we've been ignoring for 30 years of management science,
Right. So speaking of management science, there's this sort of inflection point that's coming together where, as you rightly mentioned, the example in tech, where you have executives, people that are supposed to be the thought leaders, relying on AI for answers. And AI, as we currently know it, it's only looking back as past work to come up with answers. right? So the humans
Yes.
are trying to be more like AI, and AI is trying to be more like humans.
That's so dangerous. All people have to do is watch the movie Idiocracy and see where this process ends up. You are very correct. AI is now, this goes to the nature of time, and the simple question is, does an artificial knowledge agent experience time differently from a human knowledge agent? I say yes.
Mhm.
And as you just identified, their time existence is purely retrospective. And if it's instance based, it's over like
Right.
bubbles in your Coke, man. Yes, that's a serious problem. And I would say it's a serious problem because of a thing we haven't discussed yet. Bum, bum, bum. Humans think causally. Artificial knowledge agents think probabilistically.
Mhm.
They also think very poor causally, and we think very poor probabilistically. That is a serious problem. That means we can trust these things to be better probabilistic thinkers than we are, but we absolutely cannot trust them to shape our causal understanding of the world. Otherwise, we'll all be flat earthers in a few years,
Spot on. Yes. And
right?
unfortunately, I feel this is what's going on, right? Because the way it's being used, the way it's being acclimated, it's not creating anything
Acclimated.
new. It's all about looking at the past, what have you said before, and coming up with insights and structures, modalities that fit a certain rhythm that's found from the past observations. And we're so enamored by it that rather than thinking outside the box beyond what is provided, we're looking to it to provide us, like, this is what you've thought and this is what you've said, these sort of structures of solutions you've presented in the past, and relying on it. And so there's a circular thing, the snail, what you call the snake eating its own tail, that's going. And I'm interested to see how that evolves in a number of years to come.
Yeah, I think we're at the other end of the information revolution. Back when the printing press happened and we were able to generate science quite quickly as a result of it, we went from not much information, few people had it, to now so much information, everyone has it, and we haven't seemed to have benefited from it. It seems to be tipping us over. It's an odd thing. Socially, it feels very strange. I think that whole point about acclimating to it, very true. Now, if I may wrap on a bit on this, as I said at the start, I've done city mouse and country mouse, so I've crossed different ways of being in the world, and ironically, for person and data governance, when I saw my first computer at school, I just turned around and walked straight out. I thought these things are terrible. And here we are now. Our whole world is mediated by it. My point is, I have that view, but the view is tied to different perspectives and isn't necessarily recoverable by an internet search or a prompt. So that means when my generation, because it must apply to everyone roughly in my age, right? When we all kick the bucket, that memory's gone.
Right.
That memory is gone. That means every generation after whatever year it was are digital natives. So this means historiographically, this is actually an interesting time to be in. It's how well us Gen Xers pass that ball of saying in the before times, before Nintendo even, in the world of Pong, I remember when Pong came out, in the before times, we solved all these problems. We put people on the moon. We
Right.
didn't have to think about what prompts to use.
Right. On that note, let's move on to the next question here.
All right, mate.
What do business leaders need to know, and what should they be wary of? you brought up a great example of a good starting point for a small business is to rely on the tools that they have because they are already going to have AI. If they don't have currently, they will soon start having AI baked in. But what do they need to know in general? Not just in regards to the current tools that they have, but if they wanted to start building other tools and leverage AI decision making for other things within their business.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered a few things, right? It's we've covered this use case quite well. I think it's just a business tool. It's just a business tool. So that's the first clue, is it has to really tie well into whatever is revenue producing or cost extracting, i.e., good efficiency, not bad efficiency. I'm not talking about hollowed out capitalism here. I'm talking about making sure that when you sign up for things, those tail ends are managed so that you don't cross over into someone else's fee cycle.
Right.
Things like this. It needn't be intensely hard because humans increasingly are valuing non-digital things in the first place. So our ice cream people are going to be doing well. So what am I saying? I'm saying if it's taking you away from your core business, it's the wrong move. If it's making you smarter in your key decision makings at your key decision points over the year, and you are able to see how it moves, revenue, expenses, and other places, then go for it. Otherwise, consider that as likely a fad, or B, will come bundled in whatever enterprise software you already have and don't understand anyway.
Fair enough. I'm going to push
Yeah.
back a little bit, right?
Oh,
on
okay.
that and challenge you, because why not? We have you here.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
You mentioned in the beginning about the stock prices and the months of all these data first organizations going bonkers, right? And yes, that's because they drive the innovation. But underlying all that innovation, really, the heart of it is data, the unique data sets of data that they have. Now, as a small business, you're telling me that, well, don't worry so much, just leverage these tools I have. That means I don't really tend to own my own data.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's intrinsic value that I'm potentially losing. And as a small business, I dream of potentially being a Google at some point in time.
Okay. Well, do you though? Do you? Okay, let's say we do. Let's say we do. Yeah, let's say we do. Let's go from our ice cream seller to our next gen software company mogul in waiting. Okay.
Right.
All right. Because they've seen the stock prices and they know there's a lot of money to be made here, and there is a lot of money to be made here. And yes, this individual's gone. They used to sell ice cream, and then they realized actually there's so much money in data, I better get into it. And so then I'm always thinking about the poll, you see, because I don't want to give clues away in the poll.
Right.
But our ice cream seller who's moved into this data company has realized that the large surface of potential consumption in data products is so colossal, is why wouldn't we be in there? And because they were a successful business person for so many years in new ice cream, they saw a way to build data assets around elements of the ice cream supply chain, or the ice cream production chain, or I don't know, whatever magic they put in. And then they realized that magic can be put into the data identity, because it can, and it can be multiplied or projected onto another domain. Bam, bam, bam. Data value travels. Our person has figured that out. Now they know that, oh no, I can't get into this ecosystem with Google because I want to take them over. Can't do that. What am I going to do? All right. Now we come to the open debate, don't we? You've steered me into the open debate, haven't you? Yeah.
That was my goal.
Yeah. It was. I have two views on it, both conflicting, and I haven't quite resolved them. One, there is a minima around open that if you don't have it, it's dangerous and bad and things are off. Two, There's a maxima. If you have too much of it, things are bad and it's all off, right? Where is that middle ground? Now that keeps moving. That's my problem with open AI, not the company, the ethos of open data.
So
Where that middle ground keeps moving, the risk keeps moving. Where the risk keeps moving, the losses can be quite strangely distributed. It's all quite volatile. That's why I'm nervous about it. But we still want to take over Google, don't we? So we have to learn and control it and create essentially our own closable garden. And what Anthropic is doing, I'll pass the ball back to you in a minute. What Anthropic is doing with publishing its system prompts is actually very, very, very interesting what they're doing. Over to you. I don't know if I answered the question or dodged
you
it well.
did. You
Okay.
did a good overview of it and the nuances of it. And you nailed it down, right? It's about how much data is enough data, right? And it needs to be from a perspective as a business owner, it needs to be from a perspective of my fiduciary duties as this business owner. Right?
Oh, yeah, you said fiduciary. Now I really like you. You're very right. That's why I said data and finance track so closely. It's because we can understand them really well via fiduciary duties. Over to you, back to you.
And fiduciary duties cover the ethics, privacy, all legal matters, including the valuation, the financial benefits, like you mentioned, data is an asset, right? So do I have a duty to build asset for this organization if I'm the leader? Right?
Heck yes.
Do I have a duty to maintain? Do I have a duty to maintain governance around it? Absolutely yes, right? And so, where does that stop? Should I not go for the maximum? Isn't that part of my fiduciary duty as the leader of the organization?
Where is the stopping point? Where is the stopping point? Yeah, okay, I get it. Well, it's a balance. Like realistically, it's a balance. Strangely enough, interestingly enough, organizations move in and out of solvency all the time.
Right.
What's important is those filing dates. What's important is those key beats in the year. It means we're not, oh, crikey dicks, I've actually lost my point. It was around the fact that, can you remind me again? I'm really sorry.
But we're talking about where is that drawing line in terms of my fiduciary as a leader to go after the best for my organization.
It's a balance point. You're a leader. Your primary responsibility is to the group and to the enterprise, because that's what's paying all those people's mortgages, right? So you've got to make sure that that is strong and stable, because in this environment, if you lose your people, you're stuffed, because you're just going to get replaced by some software somewhere. So you have to at all times use these precautionary principles, the things that are going to help you keep it safe. And yes, I know it's a political term, but there is an essence of conservatism to business management. That's point one. Point two, you've got to innovate and chase, because our person is going for Google. So that means they have to take a whole bunch of educated guesses. And ideally, they're in data. That means they've conditioned their probabilities. And they're good business people with know their accountants, so they've got themselves covered. They are hedged in case it all goes wrong, and then they make their move.
Or you can be a big conglomerate, right? Like Meta, and just go for it and change your entire branding based on a particular innovation.
Yeah, well, they own half the planet in data terms. So I've been down on I've been down on them for so long. It feels cruel to take on Meta anymore. I've been kicking them for so long. I did cover the Facebook oversight board for PrivSec conference a couple of years back, governance, risk, and compliance work. It was actually interesting. Credit where credit is due, especially to the ones we criticize. They did a good job with the oversight board. It is functioning, it is working. I have to design these structures myself, and I can see their strengths and weaknesses, and they did a good job. They're doing a terrible job in so many other parts of their business, but in that part of their business, they're doing a good job.
Right. So now is a good time for us to switch to the poll. Let's take a break here. Nancy, you want to
yes.
put the poll up, please?
I'm so keen on this. Oh,
So we
I've
have
got
the
to do
poll
mine.
up.
I've got to do mine.
Does
All right.
your data truly, if your data truly is an asset, where does it belong? On the profit and loss statement or on the balance sheet?
Yeah. Not sure, not relevant, or both. So I created enough room for some people there. Both will be interesting. I don't know how many we'll get with that. Right. And I am answered. Right, I've done. Okay, brilliant. Crikey, Dix, where are we? Where are we? On a break, aren't we?
We're in a break. I think it's about time right now. Nancy, I don't know if you want, can you throw up the results? Let's see what the numbers look like.
Yes.
This
We're
is a
gonna
great
have the
conversation,
poll.
Mechie.
I will know.
Yes. We're going to continue this poll. I think it's a very insightful poll. I think let's continue it on LinkedIn and see
Yeah.
what it goes.
I thought it was fantastic. I love the questions and the options.
Right.
How many answers have we gotten there?
So not many, but we have a sort of a half and half between balance sheet and both.
And both.
I went for both. That was my response.
This
and
is
now,
great.
I would like to get your take on it. Where do you think, Rohan, that it belongs?
Do I close this pane? I think I must.
Awesome.
Yes,
There
I'm
you
viewing
go.
the poll. There you go. All right.
Where do you think it belongs?
I'm going to answer that question with a couple of questions.
Okay.
We're going to run some asset tests. You hold in your mind what you think your data asset is, or just think of a data asset in your mind. Don't have to tell me in this game. I love this game. It's my favorite game. All right. Do you control it?
Yes.
I.e., hey, it's on its way to being an asset. Nice, nice. Have you identified whether or not the throughput of the data system is generating long-term value in something you control?
Does it have to be long-term or just value?
Long-term. It's an asset.
An asset could be short-term value.
Okay. You're placing this one. I think you're placing this one on the profit and loss. I think you're saying this, but because remember, it can't be on, it can be, but whether we're recording it as an expense or an income booster, profit and loss, right?
Right.
Whether or not I'm going to find it, if I found your accounts, I don't know how, and if I went straight to the balance sheet, I don't know why, and if I looked for intangible assets, who knows? If I don't find anything there, then yeah, your data asset is going to be up there in the profit and loss. Nice.
But then you could have certain data products, multiples, ones that tend on the profit and loss, and one that.
Are you charging for these products?
Exactly.
There you go. All right.
So in that case, it would be on both.
Yep. Is it the same product being obtained by multiple users?
I was thinking different products.
Extinguishing its use?
No, it's a digital product, so its use is never.
Okay, man. Yeah, you've got something. Yeah, it's good. Yay. The purpose of this exercise is not to match the right answer with the person, because I've said I don't know, it's in your head. The purpose is to make sure that we are landing in one or both primarily, and that we understand why, because this goes to the vitality of our business. This goes to the ability of our people to pay their mortgages. Mm-hmm. This goes to the ability of us to take over Google or go back to selling ice cream.
Right.
My analogies run away with me now.
And let's wrap this up with an important question, because we're talking about AI decision making in the organization. Who should be responsible for it?
I have an actual answer for this. I've been guarding this one for a while. I think there should be a chief probability officer.
Okay, we don't have those in the US, most likely. So
no one has them. No one has them. No one has them. So that was my answer to the question.
What do you mean? What do you mean by? What do you mean by chief
Well, what
capability
do we do
officer?
with what we often have different grades in the C-suite?
Mhm.
Now, I'm talking a large enough organization now. I'll
Right.
go back to the lower one in a minute. But we have some really serious people called chief financial officers. They're really serious and really scary and have to do really big things. And then there are some other ones. There might be a chief standards officer. There
Mhm.
might be a chief ethics officer.
Mhm.
Right. I'm saying for us going forward to handle decision making of the AI in the business, we need someone independently and dispassionately looking at probabilities and how they're managed. That's the chief probability officer, because the AI that we are deploying anywhere is a probabilistic engine. It's not necessarily a causal calculator. It's not necessarily adding, it's doing all sorts of things. The probability officer's job is just like the financial officer's job. Has no opinion on anything except probability, finance. Is probability important for a data-driven business? I'm saying heck yes. That's why we want these individuals. Just like finance is important. But we have undervalued probability. It's bitten us in the bum, pardon me. We are at the moment having to figure out which parts of the onrushing AI wave to hold back, how to control it. That's actually where many people are. So what's happening is probabilities have run amok. We actually don't know what to rely on anymore. That's why we would go to the chief probability officer. Now I'll pass the ball back to you in a minute. Where should it lie in the current organization? I would put it straight with the chief data officer.
Where it should not,
It
or
should
where it
be.
should? It should be.
It should be, yes, because the AI is a creature made from data.
Right. And so if you're right now in the current organizational structure, we're saying the chief data officer, and
Chief data officer.
that's probably in line with the chief analytics and chief AI officer of the organization as well.
Yeah. I think some of those roles can be folded together.
Okay.
Right.
Currently,
Yeah, I've
though,
touched.
currently, the way in most organizations that I'm familiar with, you have the chief data officer. They're more concerned with the governance piece of things and the data management, right? As opposed to the actual development of solutions and other aspects of it. Where you have the analytics and the AI are more about building the products and leveraging the data more as an asset.
Correct.
They're distinct. Once in a while, you will find the chief data and AI officer or chief data and analytics officer that combines those into one. But more often than not, you see them separated, right? So,
okay, I see you, man. I see you. In that case, if the organization thinks it's mature enough to have a chief AI officer, go for it. If the organization doesn't think, or if the chief data officer is still plugging basic data leaks, put the AI accountability with the data officer. Why? Because they, in the event of a Zeppelin-like explosion of data problems inside your business, they're the ones closest to the things that's going to seal the fire, the data. They're the ones with the data assets. They're the ones that will have the platforms. They're the ones that will know the users. They're the ones that will have the use cases. They will be able to shut large parts of the enterprise down in the case of something bad happening. And because we're in the good place as well, they are the ones assuming that they get on the front foot and start delivering data governance as a service, will then be able to help the business build safer AI.
absolutely.
There you go. That's what I think. Others will think, no, that's crazy, ignore him.
No, I completely
say, no, ignore them.
I completely agree with you. And I think this person should sit on this C-suite and report directly to the CEO and the president. Right now, I think right now, even most organizations don't even have a chief data officer or chief data and analytics officer, right? They have the CIO office that whoever's dealing with the data reports to. And I think those two roles are distinct, especially when it comes to large enterprises. Heck, they're all enterprise organizations, 100+ years old, that you have the CIO still reporting to the finance CFO, because that's how it was in the past and that's how it's maintained.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
the question is there a need for us to change the organizational structure, especially at that high level, to support the innovation and changes that AI and data are bringing along, so that the organization can be at its peak in terms of leveraging it and driving value from it?
Yes. How's that for the simplest answer I've given all podcast? Yes, absolutely. Following the bouncing ball that data is financializing, and recognizing that the human element in businesses are changing and they're often not present, and recognizing that we're actually parts of large supply chain structures, I consider that actually the chief operating officer role is going to be, that's the one to actually beef up. I think that the differentiation between chief information officer, chief technical officer, chief data officer is collapsing back on itself again. Then you have to have a chief executive or a single decision maker at the top. That person needs at least 3 good advisors. That's the finance, that's the data, and it's the operations. 1, 2, 3. It's possible to get a hung jury off that, but the chief executive should have a casting vote. All you now need is a secretary and probably an analyst or an advisor. That analyst and advisor can be bid in via contract.
Right.
Although ideally you would want to have them on staff. However, as we've just said, this is probably a largely software business anyway. So coming back to the question you asked me, can I replace my human smart advisor with a software advisor? I would say no. It's just too dangerous. You can blow your business up so quickly. But these big companies can sweat it. You probably can't.
Right. I think that's a great place to end and wrap up. So folks, yes, you can, but you shouldn't.
Unless it's safe. Safety.
Exactly.
Be safe.
Right. And the way you should think about it is, rather than replace, maybe support. Support the human decision making with the AI decision making.
Yep.
Well, Rohan, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I can go on talking for another hour. It was great having you on board, and your insights are really interesting, and we can go on talking for quite a bit.
I like that we just met and we just had to do some rap science on the spot. So I'm thanking Nancy for bringing this together, and some great questions. And thank you everyone for getting on that poll. I found it really interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you next month.
Yes, actually, I was going to post up for everyone the next
There you go.
the next month's podcast theme, which is data literacy amongst non-technical leaders.
Nice.
That'll be the subject. So I know Matt is really anxious to get on our podcast, so please join us again next month. We'll see you then. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.